You know the nice thing about having a son? You can watch him become a man and grow up with him all over again.
I love you more than anything or anybody in the whole world. And nothing or nobody can ever change that.
I'm glad everyone's sitting down in your audience. Every 13 seconds there's a divorce in this country. That's true. 2.4 million people get divorced in the United States. So first-time marriages end in about 49%. That's the rate. Second,
wow.
But listen to this, Rachel. Marriage rates don't go down, they go up. Second-time marriages end in a divorce rate of 62%. And third-time marriages, if you're brave enough to get married for the third time, 73% failure rate. So people...
I just got chills.
I know.
I don't know that we value promises as much maybe as even in my parents' generation. When we said to each other, when we stood next to each other and made promises to each other, 32 years ago, they were promises that we intended to keep come hell or high water. We were not, divorce just wasn't an option for us. I realize that that has to be true for both people. If one of us had only felt that way, then of course it would be easier to get a divorce. But I think when both people come into a relationship with the idea of divorce is not an option. I am committed to you. I'm making a vow, a vow, and I'm not going to break it. And we'll find a way to work this out. I would say surround yourself with friends who also value their marriage. If you hang out with people who don't value their own marriage, or they don't really see that marriage should be an all your life kind of a commitment, then you're going to be around people who aren't encouraging, they're not even working in their own marriage that way. And so they're going to be more likely to encourage you to go, oh, he's such a jerk, dump him. Or, you know what, she's not meeting your needs. You should find somebody else. When you have those kind of friends, it's really hard to stay committed. So I'd say go in with the idea that you're going to stay together for life. It's a promise and a vow, and you're going to work it out, and that you surround yourself with people who also are very, very committed.
Increasingly, having a father at home is a sign of affluence, but it is also a cause of affluence, especially for boys. Boys who grow up with a father at home earn much more as adults. Boys who grow up alone with their mothers tend to earn less. They also have more disciplinary problems in school. They read less and less well. They're less likely to graduate from high school or go to college. They are more likely to be unemployed and to live in poverty. They get married less often, and when they do, they divorce more. They're more likely to be obese and to have asthma. They are far more likely to abuse alcohol and drugs, exhibit antisocial behavior, and commit acts of violence. As adults, they're twice as likely to go to prison. Now, these numbers aren't the result of one study, but of numerous large studies done over generations. The results hold true across geography and ethnic groups. White and black, urban and rural, they're always true. Boys raised without their fathers are at terrible risk. There is not much serious academic debate about that, if any. Between 1960 and 2016, the proportion of kids living with both parents decreased by almost 20%. The percentage of children living with only their mothers nearly tripled. In demographic terms, this is stunning. Changes to family structure this abrupt and profound typically are only seen in wartime. And yet, if anything, those numbers understate the reality of fatherlessness in America. The nationwide breakup of families is a disaster, and not just a moral disaster, but a practical one. It may be the largest public health crisis that we face. It's a tragedy, especially for boys, and the rest of us ought to stop lying about that.
In developed nations, there's the permission for divorce that there isn't in non-developed, less developed nations. And also in developed nations, there's the permission for women to marry, to have children without being married. And that creates a huge division between boys and a division of boys who are with their fathers do quite well. Boys who are not with their fathers do terribly on more than 70 different measures of measures like postponed gratification, the ability to be, whether or not they're depressed, whether or not they're drinking, whether or not they have drugs, the opioid crisis, and even the people who are involved as ISIS recruits all over the world, they're almost completely fatherless boys, and the ones that are girls are also fatherless. And when we tell the biological father not only are you important, but the way that you father is important. The way that you enforce boundaries, the way that you encourage exploration, the way that you encourage kids to get up and try again, the way that you encourage adventure and risk-taking, the way that, that we can play together and create bonds. These are the things that mothers need to communicate, because when fathers are asked for and valued, they come back into the picture. When they're not, they drop out.
So it doesn't sound like anybody wins from fatherlessness. So if, you know, the trend is that fewer families are forming, more children are growing up without fathers at home, nobody benefits from that at all. Why aren't we sounding an alarm in this society about that, do you think?
I think we put so much focus, especially in the Democratic Party, on freedom for women. And freedom for women is a wonderful thing. But freedom for women stops when they make the free choice to have children. And then a different question has to emerge, which is what is best for the children. And what we see is evidence way beyond what I ever expected before I started doing the research for the boy crisis, is that children do best when there is not just a father, not just a male role model, but the biological father, and a biological father is far less likely to drop out of the process when there's marriage. 40% of even men and women who live together, who don't get married and have children, 40% of those fathers never see their children after 2 years.
Those are numbers that will offend people, but that's what the science tells us.
It says, you say it's very selfish for a single mother to have a baby without a father, so I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, we now have 30 or 40 years of social science research. I mean, I'm just citing, this is, you know, dressed up numbers crunching. I'm just giving the numbers. 80% of the inmates in prisons were raised by single mothers. About 70% of the runaways of the juvenile delinquents, juvenile murderers, juvenile rapists, raised by single mothers. If you were in the womb right now and you could choose whether to be black, white, rich, poor, the one thing you should hope for as a child in the womb is, my parents are married. I cite a study by the Progressive Policy Institute, a liberal institute, saying that if you take single motherhood out of the equation, the black and white crime rates are exactly the same. So you take everything else out, single motherhood is not good for children. That is a fact, and it is a fact that it is promoted. Look, the more non-judgmental we have been about the mothers, the more real victims have been created.
Can I ask you
millions
something?
and millions per year. I mean, it's not like this is some inevitable number that we must have of children being raised by single mothers every year. This didn't happen by accident. The illegitimacy rate alone has gone up over 300% since 1970. And as I describe in my book, this was a specific plan by the left attacking the nuclear family. And the point of the book is, in example after example, of how people play the victim, are exalted in this society, have doors open for them, when in fact they're the ones victimizing others. You do have, as I describe in that chapter, Hollywood, mainstream media, the New York Times, women's magazines exalting single motherhood, movie after movie about single motherhood, book after book.
It's a father's duty to see to it that his son grows up to be a respected and trusted member of his community.
All it takes is hard work, perseverance, determination.
You know, Wally, shaving is just one of the outward signs of being a man. It's a whole lot more important to try to be a man inside first.
Take my word for it. Money isn't nearly as important as the good feeling you get from doing the right thing.
You don't use the ability and the brains that God gave you, you're cheating. You're cheating God and you're cheating yourself.
Now that you're taking on a job, you're taking on a responsibility, you know. Be prompt, hardworking, and loyal.
As you go through life, try to improve yourself, not prove yourself.
Remember what I've always told you. Never start a fight, but never run away from one.
The family's one place where you're always wanted. Don't you ever forget it.
Never wanted to get married, I'm married. Never wanted to have kids, I get 2 of them. How the hell did this happen?
Nice to spend these father-son moments together, Dad.
Shut up, I'm trying to read.
You little bastard!
That's the angry one.
Hello, folks. A lady friend of mine just sent me an article called 5 Reasons Being a Single Mom is Way Better Than Being a Married Mom. I don't usually read mom blogs because they tend to just be feel-good claptrap that says, whatever my shitty situation is, totally rocks. It's just there to make you feel good. They don't have to do any research. I don't think they have one fact checker in the entire genre of writing. But I read this with a critical mind because someone sent it to me and asked me to, and I was disgusted. It's by a woman named Elizabeth Laura Nelson. Divorced, she's got 2 kids now, and she wants to let other moms know that that totally rocks. Everything about being a woman that comes from feminism totally rocks, okay? Being a cougar, being old, being single, yeah, it's cool. But number 1, she says, I don't wake up filled with rage every morning. She says on a typical morning, she'd run a loop in the park, made breakfast, packed her daughter's lunches, found a mitten. Kicking, taking names. And blah, 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 broken up a squabble. Then he'd wake up. That's the man in the relationship. He'd make a pot of coffee and stand there in his pajamas, waiting for it to brew. It drove me bananas. My girls got used to hearing mommy yell. Notice it's written for children, too, in a weird way. Let me explain something to you ladies. We do suck in the morning, us dads. That's because it's not our time to shine. It's your time to shine. It's your turn to get the lunches ready. It's your turn to be stressed out, to be worried. That from when the 6 to 9, that's your rush hour. After that, when we're gone to work and the kids are at school, not only can you do whatever you want, no one has any way of knowing. You can watch daytime TV, you can sit and look at a booger and stare at it for 10 minutes thinking, that looks kind of like Donald Trump's hair. No one cares. It's not any of our business. You can go back to bed and go to sleep. We can't. We are out there rushing for a meeting in real rush hour, trying to get more money for you to spend, to buy mittens, to buy the coffee, to put the roof over their heads. We have to worry about everything. It's all our problem. Even when things are going well, we have to have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D for, I don't know, what if we get sued and we're broke tomorrow? So that pissed me off. And then we had number 2. I get whole weekends off from being a mom. By the way, spoiler alert here, every single thing of these 5 reasons why it's great to be a single mom involve her. The kids don't come up once. Me. I get whole weekends off from being a mom. Doesn't that sound suspicious to you? Doesn't that sound terrible? These kids are getting 5/7 of a mom. The kids are also getting 2/7 of a dad. Imagine a dad bragging, going, I get 5 days off from being a fucking dad. Blech. Believe me, I need a break from being a dad. It sure sucks being a dad. I get the weekend off from being a mom. Yeah, but if you're not a mom, someone doesn't have a mom for those 2 days. Do you understand? And I'm reminded of, I was at the airport recently, and I heard this guy in the next stall. And he was changing a kid, maybe a 7-year-old boy, and he had feces all over him. Sorry to get so graphic, but I guess the kid had pooed his pants. He had a wet fart. Not a big deal. I get him once a year. And I heard him yelling, God damn it, what's the matter with you? And then I heard him say, there's something wrong with you. He's mad, the kid's crying. They go out and I follow their shoes because I had to see who this was. And he sits with his mom. And then the dad was mad. He just looked at his newspaper. He had cleaned up the mess, I presume, thrown the underwear in the garbage. And then the mom was holding the boy and consoling him. You see what's going on here? Yin and yang, good cop, bad cop. That's what a well-rounded person has. You can't have all the hair stroking. It's okay, you just sharted. And you can't have all there's something wrong with you, idiot. I just threw your underwear in the garbage. You need the balance. You need to know that you have to be more organized about your bowel movements, but you also have to know there's nothing wrong with you. You just had an accident. And when you remove those things from the equation, it's not like they get a beautiful balance over the course of the week. No, they get 5 of too much mommy and 2 of too much daddy. Not enough of both. It's not about you. The black community, Hispanic community, especially in New York here, is up to 80% single moms at times. Number 3, I get to make the rules. Yeah. No more trying to get the kids to fall asleep after their dad winds them up. their dad winds them up. You mean when he's a giant elephant and they all pile on his back and he walks around the house going, and they laugh their heads off, making wonderful memories forever? What do you mean winds them up? She says, no more, but Daddy said I could eat snacks on the sofa. Jesus, so much here about having to be democratic with your husband. By the way, it's not good just to have a mom making the rules. Dads seem to be better at rules. They're sort of prison guards, but the mom is there for checks and balances. It's a team effort. And the idea that you can just become a dictator all of a sudden is bad news. And I saw an article the other day that said, adopting when you're alone. And it was an article about single moms adopting. That's called child abuse. Yeah. I'm sorry, kids are much worse off when they're raised by single moms. So if you knowingly do that, if you're not a widow or something, or there's some sort of horrible catastrophe that leads you to this, if you knowingly saddle your kids with a single parent, you've abused them. It's like knowing they're going to be blind or they're going to be deaf, or knowing this, you're purposely setting out to make a kid with a disadvantage. Isn't that child abuse? Number 4. I found out how amazing my friends are. I put myself in such a horrible situation that my friends had to come in and help out. And I saw, wow, you're nice. Isn't that a great way to learn something? Why don't you just say, you know, I really enjoyed drowning because I got to see which of my friends can swim. Turns out 2 of them, who I never thought were good swimmers, had to come in and rescue me. What an eye-opener that was. Good work, lady. And then she talks about how her friends get to live vicariously through her sex life. This woman is in her late 30s, I believe, and she's out gallivanting around the town. I don't even want to know what she's getting up to, but the fact that she's bragging about it is what disturbs me. If your husband was cheating and he kicked you to the curb and you're left all alone here with this kid, that's terrible. That's a tragedy. And you have my sympathy. But my problem here with these women's, I want to call them women's magazines, online magazines, is they glorify this terrible situation and try to say that it rocks. Because women today are all about rocking and rolling and you're a badass. Why did you marry a 40-year-old when you were 23, by the way? And then she says, I wanted my girls to grow up knowing it's never too late to change course and pursue happiness, even if it means breaking a promise. Great lesson for the kids, by the way. And also, I'm 45. I'm a Gen Xer. I gotta say 80% of my friends don't have kids. And I'm not talking about cool alternative friends. I'm talking about the suburban kids I grew up with. I'm talking about everyone, race, class, everyone. And I believe it's because they were traumatized by divorce. They go, I had a shitty childhood. My parents were totally selfish. I only saw my dad on the weekends, and I don't want to duplicate that. So, way to go, divorcers. Now, just in case you didn't like it when I said it's child abuse to knowingly become a single mom, I would like to direct you to Sarah McClanahan at Princeton University, who suggests boys are more likely to end up in jail or in prison by the time they turn 30 if they are raised by a single mom. Again, race is skewing that stat. But lest you think this is all about rich and poor, it's true that poor families, this is by the way from a Slate article, I believe. It's true that poorer families are more likely to be headed by a single mom, but even factoring out class shows a clear difference. Research by the Economic Mobility Project at Pew suggests that children from intact families are also more likely to rise up the income ladder if they were raised in a low-income family, and less likely to fall into poverty if they were raised in a wealthy family. You see? And also, by the way, this lady has girls, so let's focus on the young girls that are getting this totally awesome mom 5 days, 5 days a week. The Bruce Ellis University of Arizona, this is Bruce Ellis of the University of Arizona, he found that 1/3 of girls whose fathers left the home before they turned 6 ended up pregnant as teenagers, compared with just 5% of girls whose fathers were there throughout their childhood. You got that? 33% pregnant teens, only 5% pregnant teens when dad stuck around. I am noticing there is this push for divorce all the time. I know of a couple there, they weren't married, but she went to see him, her therapist, who I suspect was a bitter old dumped divorcee. That's just my interpretation. But she went in there and said, I'm not happy. And the woman said, dump him. You're not happy. Get rid of it. And they did. He was about to propose to her. She's miserable, calls him crying all the time. I can tell you at least half a dozen of stories like that. And also with my married friends, every time I hear about them going to couples therapy, It always ends badly. I was talking to another a couple once, and they said, yeah, we go in there, and they say, the therapist says, do you have sex when you're on vacation, when the kids aren't around, and you can have sex? And they go, oh, yeah, we breed like rabbits. And then he says to the lady, always seems to be a woman, what would you have said if we said no? And then she said, well, we would start coming up with an exit plan. Can you imagine you go see your priest and you're having trouble with your faith? And he says, well, do you pray to God when you're about to get in a car accident? Do you ask the Lord? Or when you're hungover, do you pray to God to stop barfing? And if you said no, I would come up with an exit plan. Why is there an exit plan? We're talking about marriages that need some work. And the first reaction always seems to be, boom, let's get rid of this. Well, you can't get rid of it, okay? I'm sorry you're unhappy. Fix it. This isn't about you. It's about the kids. So grow up. Being a single mom sucks. It sucks for everyone, especially the children you brought into this world.